has joined us. Andrew Romanoff has joined us. Good morning, Andrew.
How are you?
Great. It's so good to see you, and thank you so very much for joining us this morning. First of all,
Sure.
let me congratulate you on your fabulous results at the state convention. That was
Thank
good
you very
to hear.
much.
Yep.
Thank you.
And so there are, let's see, there are a lot of us on the call, 22 of us on the call right now. So if you would like to talk to us, please do.
Well, thank you. Thanks for the opportunity. I really appreciate it. I hope you all are staying safe and healthy. I've talked to many of you before. I think we were at Whole Foods, gosh, it seems like a year ago. This is the world's longest campaign, but the end is near. That's not a prediction. I don't have a sign like that I'm marching down the mall with. So the ballots in this Senate race go out on June 9th. The primary itself is June 30th. As you heard, I won the state convention. We won the caucuses, won the county assemblies, most of them at least. And if you all were part of that process, I want to say thank you. Today, we're expecting a final ruling from the Supreme Court that will likely remove all but two candidates from the ballot. So you're left with a choice in this race. I'm not setting off to settle for this, but between John Hickenlooper and me. So one of three people will be the next United States Senator from Colorado, either Cory Gardner, a guy who has the job now, Hick, or me. I'm happy to share some thoughts with you about why I believe I'm the best choice, but I'd rather spend most of my time answering your questions. I will tell you, for those I don't know, I led the Democrats in Colorado to our first majority in 30 years, our first back-to-back majorities since 1960, became Speaker of the House, got recognized as one of the most effective legislative leaders in America. I teamed up with a Republican governor to pass an economic recovery plan called Referendum C, which remains the only change we've made to Tabor in 28 years. I teamed up with my friend Kerry Kennedy, who is our state treasurer, to create the largest investment in school construction in state history. I teamed up with my late friend Ken Gordon, who was the Senate Majority Leader, to crack down on insurance companies that unreasonably delay or deny the payment of valid claims. I got termed out of the legislature after doing all that because Colorado has a limit, but I spent the last 4 years leading the fight for mental health care in our state. I was the president and CEO of a group called Mental Health Colorado. And I'm running for the US Senate in a nutshell because I don't want anyone, especially in the richest nation on the face of the earth, to struggle or suffer or die on account of problems that we can fix. I'm running to combat the climate crisis, to ensure health care for all, to create an economy that works for everyone. Those are all challenges that existed before this pandemic hit. But one thing this crisis has laid bare is a lot of the inequities that we need to close when the crisis ends. We can't just go back to normal, not when 72 million Americans were already uninsured or underinsured, not when African-American families were forced to contend with only 1/10 the wealth of white families, and certainly not now when millions of Americans will be unemployed. 47 million Americans are expected to lose their jobs by the time we hit rock bottom. So I think the question voters want to know is, when we get out of this mess, will we be able to put people back to work, building a clean energy infrastructure through a Green New Deal? I say yes. Cory Gardner and John Hickenlooper say no. Will we finally get a system of health care for all, coverage that doesn't depend on our jobs? I say yes. Cory Gardner and John Hickenlooper say no. These are real issues that you ought to have a chance to debate. I've challenged Governor Hickenlooper to a series of debates. He skipped most of them, 19 in all, even before the pandemic arrived. And I guess the last thing I'll say is this: the least that you should demand and expect from the people you send to Washington to represent you is a willingness to show up and answer questions. We already have a senator who doesn't do that. Cory Gardner, as you probably know, hasn't held a town hall meeting in about 2.5 years. But I'm trying to run a grassroots campaign grounded in the people of Colorado. I don't take money from special interest groups because I think they have enough politicians on their payroll. I'd be honored to earn your support. You can learn more at andrewromanoff.com in case we run out the clock in this conversation. Happy to take your questions.
Okay, Owen?
Hey, Andrew. Thanks for being here.
You look like you're in some kind of Cezanne landscape there. Where are you?
This is actually where I used to live, outside of Santa Fe. I can't see it anymore, but a house right over here next to a bridge at Ottawee Crossing. There's a big, great history about this that goes back to World War II, Los Alamos stuff. But anyway, I got a question for
I
you.
got to improve my Zoom landscape here. This is my actual apartment.
I love it. You mentioned right there at the end about campaign finance and not taking special interest money, and working with Ken Gordon's group, Clean Slate Now, I've noticed a lot of people who get very close to being pure on that issue, but I don't know if I've ever seen anybody as committed to PAC-free and special interest-free campaigns as your campaigns have been. I know you've been under enormous pressure to accept special interest money by consultants have advised you, and special interests, I'm sure, have advised you. Can you talk about how important that is, the effects, beyond just the talking point of not taking PAC money, but the effects of how that really influences policy in your campaigns, and how the challenge of running that kind of campaign?
Yeah, you bet. And I wanted to say to you, Owen, personally, thank you for picking up the baton from our late friend, Ken Gordon. Some of you, I think on the Zoom call, probably knew Ken, who was a state rep and then a state senator, majority leader, should have been Secretary of State, ran for that job and lost narrowly. I'm inspired by Ken every day. I wish you were here. And one of the things, we had many conversations in the 20 years I knew him about this subject. And one of the things he pointed out is that the system is never going to change unless somebody stands up to change it. As you know, Owen, it's very unlikely that members of Congress will alter the rules that got them there. It would be against their interest. They're certainly not going to bite the hands that feed them. And you're right, there are a lot of folks that will give you this advice, whether you ask for it or not. The chattering class in DC and the consultants and the party bosses and the power brokers will tell you, you can't win without all that corporate cash. We're trying to prove them wrong. And I think you've seen examples. I mean, Barack Obama, when he got elected president, did not take money from special interest groups. Beto O'Rourke, who almost beat Ted Cruz, raised $80 million from across the country from individuals, didn't take money from special interest groups. We've raised about $2.5 million in the course of this race, including some from the people on this call, without any money from special interest groups. And I figure if a guy like me can win a race like this without all that corporate cash, our victory itself will send a shockwave to a town that needs one. And when we win, somebody else will take the same approach. And when she wins, another candidate will follow suit. Eventually, we can build a critical mass of representatives and senators who owe their allegiance to their constituents, not to their corporate contributors. I should acknowledge that although I'm proud that we don't take special interest money, most of those groups are not offering. Like if you're an insurance company or a drug company or a big oil company, chances are you're not going to be trying to give me money anyway, and that's fine. I don't want it. They've got other preferences in this race. But at the end of the day, it's pretty obvious to me that the reason we're not going to get or have such a hard time getting the climate action we need, the healthcare reform we need, or any of the other big changes we need is because the same interest groups that are blocking those reforms are bankrolling members of both parties who then vote along with them.
Okay, Ruth Clevenger and then Jim Chaney. Ruth?
Unmute, Ruth.
There we go.
Yeah.
So I have a pretty specific question for you then, and that is, especially since volunteers aren't going to be able to canvass door to door, do lit drop door to door for you, we're really constrained in how we're going to, be able to canvass. What's your strategy, especially since Hickenlooper has so much money? I'm thinking about the primary now. Hick has so much money to bombard people with direct mail and who knows what else. What is your strategy for, I mean, I know you've been doing a lot of video conferences and that's great, but I feel like you're speaking to the choir with that. So how are you going to handle that and how can we help?
Well, that's a very friendly, I take your premise. I appreciate the friendly question, Ruth, and I hope you're doing well, by the way. So a couple things. You're right, we can't knock on doors. We had hundreds of house parties, as you know, for the first 12 months of the campaign. That all came to an end when the pandemic hit. But people are texting and phoning voters. We had the Sunrise Movement, a group of young climate activists across the country who endorsed my campaign, put together a phone bank last night. 367 people, young people, signed up. to make phone calls. It's phenomenal. And so if you want to help join a phone bank, you can go to andrewromanoff.com and click on the tab that says Get Involved. That's one step. We're also texting voters. And I know this is sometimes an intrusive technique, but people seem to understand since you can't knock on their door, you can only reach them by other means. I myself have used the app that our campaign deploys called Hustle. It's a good name for this app, to text more than 300,000 voters personally, one at a time in the last 4 weeks. It's a super easy app. You don't have to be tech savvy to use it. I figured it out in about 60 seconds. You just press send with questions and then answers, and you have a conversation with the voters who respond. So we're trying to show that a retail campaign like ours can compete with all the corporate cash on the other side. And I guess the third thing I'll say is that when people have information in this race, we win. I know that because we took a poll last fall. We asked folks what they knew about Hick, what they knew about me. And more of them knew of him because he was governor for 8 years than knew of me because I've been out of office since 2009. But when we actually gave folks some facts about my record of leadership and my agenda on a Green New Deal and Medicare for all, an economy that works for everyone, and Hick's record, suing communities that tried to restrict fracking, literally drinking the fracking fluid, taking money from the fossil fuel industry, demonizing these progressive proposals by comparing them to the work of Karl Marx and Joseph Stalin. Those are Hick's words. And then telling everybody for the better part of a year, as he did, that he'd be a terrible senator and hate the job. When you actually lay out the facts, not character attacks, just information, they side with us. So the poll shows me winning by the end of that informed ballot by double digits. The trouble is, of course, and you alluded to this, Ruth, is that most folks don't have that information. What they'll have instead, unless we do our job, is a lot of TV ads with John's name on them. So we're challenging him to some debates. We'll hope he shows up, and then let the facts decide this case.
So going back to sort of old-fashioned techniques, do you have yard signs?
Yes,
that we
ran
can
out.
put out? And what about postcards? Because I actually know a lot of people who are happy, especially since we're stuck at home, to write postcards. And I think I read someplace that actually a handwritten postcard is pretty effective.
Yeah, that's true. So we ran out of yard signs. We're ordering some more. It's a good problem to have. And we've heard from a number of folks about the postcard campaign. I'll follow up with my team on that. I don't know what the strategy is. For now, it's mostly been phoning, texting, hosting virtual events like this one. We have, and you're right, we're trying to expand the universe, but we do town hall meetings every Tuesday at 5, every Friday at noon. We've had about 2,000 people averaging on these calls through Zoom and Facebook. You can find the details at andrewromanoff.com/live. In fact, I'll just put in this pitch for those of you interested in the climate crisis, which we all should be if we live on Earth. One of the world's leading environmentalists, a fellow who founded 350.org, the climate action group, is named Bill McKibben. He's endorsed me yesterday, and he's joining me tonight at 5 o'clock on our town hall. So if you go, all you need to do is just go to andrewromanoff.com/live at 5 o'clock tonight, and you can enjoy the conversation with Bill and me. And Diana Bray, who is another Senate candidate. She dropped out of the race and endorsed me.
Good. Jim Chaney, and then John Ferguson.
Hello, Andrew. This is Jim. Good to
Hey, Jim.
see you again. I was pretty active with Colorado Wins with the state of Colorado, the state employees union. I want to thank you for your support of those efforts. I also wanted to let you know that I actually supported Trish Zornio early on, and she has a lot to offer. So you might want to see if she is willing to support your campaign. The question I have is, and it's a little bit of an adversarial question, so forgive me.
That's
How
right.
are you gonna restore confidence in the Latino voting community?
So first of all, thanks for your question. I see your loyalty to Trish is still on display in the sign behind you, and I'd love to have her support. I'm reaching out to her for that. So there's a lot of disinformation around the issue that you're alluding to, and in case we run out the clock here, I'll point folks to an op-ed I wrote in the Denver Post on this subject. I strongly support and always have comprehensive immigration reform. I wouldn't be here in America if the country hadn't opened its doors to my mom and all 4 of my grandparents. I'm the son and the grandson of immigrants. You're right that there was a tough question facing the legislature back in 2006 when a group of anti-immigrant advocates tried to amend the state constitution to deny services to folks who were here without proper documentation. The truth is, people without proper documentation weren't getting those services in the first place. They weren't eligible for welfare, food stamps, housing assistance, or the rest. Bill Owens, the governor at the time, called the legislature into special session, demanded we put that measure on the ballot for the voters to decide. I crafted a compromise, which I thought was the least damaging alternative, that simply said, you can't get these services that you already couldn't get. Cory Gardner actually voted against the compromise because he said it didn't go far enough. And in a sense, he was right that we didn't actually take away services that people were legally eligible to receive. I've spent the last 14 years since then, and in the effort to pass the compromise as well, meeting with advocates to try to repair the damage, to make sure that people who are willing to work hard, to play by the rules, can actually achieve a spot that isn't in the shadows of life in Colorado. We've had this conversation in Facebook Live, in town halls in public, in op-eds I've written, in communications in person with folks when that was still possible. At the end of the day, I recognize that some people are not going to accept any apology or any explanation. Some folks who weren't here or don't care about the facts will never stand with me, and that's their decision. But I continue to believe what we learned then is that a state cannot solve this issue on its own. We need federal comprehensive immigration reform. That's what I fought for in 2006 when we passed a resolution demanding that kind of action from Congress. And it's what I will continue to fight for if I get to the US Senate. On the other side of this debate, you should know, is a fellow named Cory Gardner, who sides with the Trump administration and endorsed the president despite his practice of caging children and tearing families apart. That's immoral. And we ought to do everything we can, not just to replace the president, but to replace Cory Gardner and to pass the reforms that morality demands.
Okay. John Ferguson.
Good morning, Andrew. It's very good to see you.
Hey, John.
I'm really glad to see you, in fact. I want to ask, I guess it's a difficult question from my perspective, and it's this. John Hickenlooper is not running against you. He's running against Cory Gardner. Everything I see from his campaign is about how he has to beat Cory Gardner.
Right.
I'm wondering, so let's assume you beat him, you beat John Hickenlooper and you are the candidate. Are you going to sort of, what should I say, fold in behind the Democratic National Committee? Are you going to support what's that guy's name that's running for president?
Joe Biden.
Joe Biden, thank you very much. It's my memory, not him. Are you going to support him? Are you going to campaign with him? Are you going to accept donations or financial support from the DNC? The RNC is going to be giving huge amounts of money to Cory Gardner. I'm wondering how that balance is going to work out. I appreciate any comment you have to make.
Yeah, sure. No, I appreciate the question, John. It's nice to see you too. So let me start with the easiest question. I support Joe Biden for president. And I think we all should. And I'm happy to have his support if he chooses to offer it. And I certainly expect that the Democratic ticket will stand together. You should also know that I will support John Hickenlooper if he wins the nomination. It's not a tough call for me. I said when I joined the race 15 months ago that I would support the winner of this primary no matter what, and my stance remains. I'm happy to have the help of progressives across the country and the Democratic Party if I win the nomination. I don't think it was appropriate for Chuck Schumer and the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee to put their thumb on the scale. They recruited Hick, even though he told them he'd hate and be the job and be terrible at it. They're bankrolling his campaign. The National Party ought to be neutral, in my view, when there's a contest among Democrats. But Schumer didn't get the memo. The good news is he doesn't actually get to vote in Colorado. He just acts that way. So I'd be glad. I'm sure that the same crowd has told every candidate in this race that while they have a strong preference for the ex-governor, they will support the winner no matter what. And I expect that'll be true. Washington is a fairly transactional town, and they need this seat. We're not going to start taking PAC money, but happy to have the support of the party after we win the nomination. And look, you probably know if you were here as you were in 2014 that this was one of the most expensive Senate races in America. Cory Gardner and Mark Udall, I think each spent about $20 million in that fight. You could double that number to get a sense of the price tag here. There's one myth that surrounds Hick's candidacy, the notion that he alone can beat Gardner. That's just not true. The facts show a generic Democrat beats Corey right now by 11 or 13 points. And if you win the nomination, you find yourself showered with cash and a lot more friends. You can boost your name recognition with the tens of millions of dollars that you receive and the advertising that you're able to purchase. I think we ought to demand more than a generic Democrat. And I'll say one more thing, and I'm sorry to run out the clock. I think John will struggle to debate Corey. If he's not willing to debate me, I don't know how he's going to hold up against Cory Gardner in a debate. The Republicans have already turned all the footage that John essentially gave them when he said he'd hate the job, he wasn't cut out for it, he'd be a terrible senator, he wasn't going to run. This misery that he's inviting upon himself formed a fairly easy TV spot that the Republicans are now running against him online.
Okay, anyone else have questions? Yeah, Jerry? Hold on, Jerry. I've got to unmute you. Jerry, unmute your mic.
There we go. Yeah, Andrew, this is Jerry Busick. I live in Denver, but I'm hibernating down here in the very southeast corner of the state in Baca County.
Yes.
A little tiny town called Walsh,
Yes.
which just got its first 2 confirmed coronavirus people. My question is, given this area, and I come down here quite a bit, it's kind of, the feeling is it's kind of forgotten by the statewide people as far as recognition, as far as concern. Obviously I'm in a very red county, but there are Democrats here.
Yeah.
And it's not just Baca County, it's all the rural area. How can you assure them that they will be part of your work in the Senate?
But thanks for your question, Jerry. And by the way, I'd like to be there with you. It looks very peaceful and beautiful where you are right now.
It is very quiet.
Yeah, I envy you. So a couple thoughts. I've spent time not just as a candidate or a tourist, but as a state representative, as the minority leader, as the Speaker of the House, and as the president of Mental Health Colorado, traveling all across the state to address the concerns that you're alluding to. I'll just give you a couple examples. I mentioned earlier the work that Kerry Kennedy and I did to pass $1 billion plan to repair schools, especially in rural Colorado. We put that plan together. It's called BEST, and I'm willing to bet Baca County has got a BEST grant because just about every school district in the state has applied. We put that plan together because we found kids going to school in buildings that were literally falling down. I believe the quality of your education should not depend on your zip code or your parents' bank account. So we cobbled together the largest investment in school construction in state history because of the conversations we had with students and teachers and parents, school board members and principals in rural Colorado. It's one of the reasons, by the way, that work is one of the reasons I've earned endorsements now from 375 school board members and county commissioners and mayors and city council members and legislators across the state. I don't have all these high-priced endorsements out of Washington, but we've got a lot of grassroots support in Colorado because of my commitment to rural education, access to rural healthcare, including mental health care. The work I did at Mental Health Colorado speaks to that. And one of the things, as you know, that stops people from accessing services is not just the stigma of mental illness or drug addiction or the unavailability of healthcare providers. It's also the internet, because if you don't have access to high-speed broadband, which we should have in 2020, for God's sake, then it's very difficult to join the modern economy. So I have a commitment to making sure that we build out that infrastructure. It's the equivalent of what the highways were in the 1950s or the railroad was in the 19th century. It's time for us to get everybody online. And the other piece I guess I'll offer is this. I know there's a lot of sentiment in southeastern Colorado. I spent a lot of time, particularly in the Arkansas Valley, that somehow the state's commitment to economic development ends somewhere at the El Paso County line. So we focus on the Metro Denver, we focus on Colorado Springs, and we forget the fact that people need jobs in other parts of the state. And part of that is education, part of that is telecommunications infrastructure, but part of it is also a recognition that we're all gonna sink or swim together here. And to me, at least, your ability to get a job, to get healthcare, to get a decent education, to allow your kids to stay in the same town where you grew up if they want to do that, those things should all be possible. in a modern economy. That's my commitment.
Okay. Mel? Unmute your mic, Mel. There.
Got
Thanks.
it. Do you have anything to say about gun regulation?
I do, and this issue is personal to me, like many of the issues. I lost one of the people I love most in the world to gun violence 5 years ago. It's the reason I took a job at Mental Health Colorado because her death was a suicide. You might know suicides account for most gun deaths in America. I earned an F from the NRA, I'm proud to say, when I was in the legislature. There is a difference in this race between Hick and me on this issue too, we could talk about, but I've laid out a plan on my website at andrewromanoff.com to reduce the rate of gun violence. I know that gun lobby will tell you, you can't get this number to 0. And maybe they're right. But if you're losing 100 people a day to gun violence, if you're almost alone in the industrialized world and seeing this slaughter, surely there are some things that we could do to make that number go down. I'd say universal background checks, a ban on high capacity magazines and military style assault weapons, stronger enforcement of existing laws, like the ban on straw purchases where somebody goes in to buy a gun on behalf of somebody else. I think we ought to take all of those steps. Cory Gardner has taken none of them. He has taken a lot of money, right? The NRA spent like $4 million to keep him in office, which makes him the 5th biggest beneficiary of gun money in the entire United States Congress. That explains his voting record. But I guess I'll tell you this. For my family and me, on January 1st, 2015, when we lost my little cousin, like a kid sister to me, to gun violence, if there had been only 99 gun deaths in America that day, instead of 100, our lives would be better off forever. That's why I supported the red flag law to stop people who pose significant danger to themselves or others from keeping their weapons. A proposal that, by the way, passes constitutional muster. So yeah, I will do everything I can to spare other families the anguish that we've suffered. I would do absolutely anything in the world to bring my little cousin back to life. I can't do that. So what I'll commit to you, what I did in the State House, what I did in Mental Health Colorado, what I'll do in the Senate is stand up to the gun lobby and stop this massacre from taking place.
Okay. Kathy Glatz, then Fred Ellert, and then John Ferguson.
Hi, Andrew. And this is actually somebody else's question, but it hasn't come up yet, so I'll ask it because I think it's good. What are your thoughts on the Postal Service?
Well, it's part of our heritage, it's part of our Constitution, and it's part of our commitment. You know, when Jerry was asking earlier about rural Colorado, we ought to recognize that the private sector is not going to serve everybody when it comes to Postal Service or other necessities. So I'm committed to protecting it. I met with members of the Postal Union, making sure that they don't face this financial burden that no other agency is forced to carry, and stand up to the president. If, God forbid, he's still in office next year, stand up to him now in his attempts to decimate the USPS.
Okay. Fred Ellert, then John Ferguson, then Owen, and then Bruce.
There's a 2-question limit or a 2-drink minimum on this call. Maybe it's too early. I'm not sure.
Good morning, Andrew. I have a concern with climate change. I know this coronavirus obviously is a major national priority, but climate change marches on.
Yes.
And I'm concerned about the fact that at this point, most of the political spectrum is completely ignoring the problems that continue to exist and march on even while we address coronavirus. Could you address that?
Yes, and you're right. I mean, this climate emergency didn't pause for the pandemic. Although it's interesting, one of the things we've seen is a reduction in carbon emissions because there's less human activity on Earth, less people driving places and putting out some of these greenhouse gases. So I suppose one lesson you can draw from the pandemic is that people can change behavior when we have to. And we have to. I mean, you already know the science here, and we'll talk about it some more tonight with Bill McKibben. Again, we're doing this town hall on the climate crisis with Bill McKibben at 5 o'clock, andrewromanoff.com/live. But look, we've destroyed more of the polar ice caps in the last 20 years than the previous 10,000. We've emitted more pollution in the last 40 years than in all of recorded history. And I tell folks, even if you didn't care about our ability to survive on Earth as humans, you might take some sympathy for the other million species we've driven to the point of extinction. They didn't sign up for this, but they don't get to vote. We're the only animals who do. And it's a good thing, because if they could, by the way, those animals would probably vote us off of this global island. So I support a bold, aggressive plan called a Green New Deal to end our reliance on fossil fuels as swiftly as possible. I know we can't do it tomorrow, but we need to accelerate this transition. Stop spending $650 billion a year in direct and indirect subsidies for oil and gas and coal. Put that money instead into solar and wind and other renewables. Transform our electrical grid, our transportation system, our building codes. Help frontline communities mitigate the damage that oil and gas development has done. And then help fossil fuel workers actually take jobs in the clean energy economy, where there are twice as many jobs to be had. I'll tell you, one of the reasons I'm so inspired by the Sunrise Movement and the other climate activists that are leading the fight here is because they take inspiration from the original New Deal, when we faced a pair of existential threats, a Great Depression, a Second World War, and we found courage on the part of an American president named FDR, who was willing to help rebuild the country and put millions of people back to work. I know we don't have FDR in the White House right now, whatever the opposite of President Roosevelt is in that room today, but I think we should take some inspiration from that era and grow our economy and protect our environment. We can do both of those things at the same time.
Okay, John Ferguson.
Andrew, I wonder if you could say a little bit about what your approach to doing something about healthcare reform would be. What of the various sort of plans that have been put forth, which one do you support the most, and how are you working to the Senate to build a coalition to make it happen?
You bet.
I appreciate all the great questions, but I have to grab Andrew for another event in just a moment. Thanks, everyone.
Okay. That's the voice of God, Caroline, my handler and boss. So I'll make this question the last one because it's another life and death issue that I care a lot about. John, I support a plan called Medicare for All. And I'll tell you what I mean. The name itself is a little misleading because Medicare itself doesn't go far enough. We ought to first strengthen Medicare by adding benefits that aren't part of the package now, like dental, vision, hearing, and long-term care. Second, we need to increase reimbursement rates for Medicare providers, especially in rural and other underserved communities. I met folks on the Eastern Plains, for example, who tell me that even when they have Medicare, they can't find a provider who will take it. Or when they're in the Western Slope, they're paying higher insurance premiums for private policies than anywhere in America. So we need to make sure that we get all these providers in this plan. And that's the point of universal single-payer healthcare. You put everybody in a risk pool, you spread the risk, and you make sure that you can keep your doctor or your nurse because by definition, they'd be part of this network. That doesn't happen now. If you've got a private plan, you may not be able to keep it because you lose your job, you change your job, your employer can't provide that kind of coverage, and it shouldn't have to. Your coverage should not depend on your employment. So I'd say strengthen Medicare and then lower the age of eligibility to 0. That was part of the original game plan. If you go back to 1965, you talk to the proponents then, they'll tell you they didn't expect to just declare victory when we covered seniors. Thank God, if you get to be 65, you've got coverage that at least by today's law can never be taken away. But what if you're 64? I met a woman that age in Greeley at a brew pub. We did a town hall there back when those things were possible. She told me she needed spinal surgery, but you couldn't have.
Oops.
She pushed the button.
Yeah, sorry.
Your coverage shouldn't depend on your age. That's my point. You asked in terms of how to get from here to there. I'd say one thing we should not do is start the negotiations at the 50-yard line. We got to tell folks what we're for. If we have negotiating partners, unlike Mitch McConnell, then we can figure out a way to craft a compromise. But we should start instead not by negotiating with ourselves, as we too often do.
Okay. Thank you, Andrew, so much
Thank
for
you.
joining us this morning. Good luck.
Thank
and
you.
We'll see you
Thank
soon.
you.
Love you.
Thank you all very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay. Janet, you had something to say?
Well, it was a question for Andrew, which was, there's all kinds of oil workers that are out of work. And I was wondering if there was a way or a plan to begin seeking out oil workers and training them for free for renewable energy jobs. That was my question for him, because I think that will be the quickest way to point us in that direction. And I know that there was free construction training when we were in need of more construction workers here in Denver. That's all.
Yeah, I have unmuted everyone. Owen, do you have a response to that? That would probably be what Andrew would say.
I don't want to try to speak for Andrew, and I don't know what his response would be there. But my question is worth passing on, and it's maybe slightly related, not much to Janet's question, but only in that it addresses workers. Fred had my question earlier on climate change, but Andrew did a great town hall on Friday where he virtually went to Weld County and had many of the people who work at the meat processing plant there that was having the issues, were making national news, and union representatives, and was talking to them. And it's the most in-depth conversation I've seen with getting on the ground as much as you can right now and talking to the essential workers and the challenges they're facing right now. And it was appropriately on May Day. But I'm pretty sure that's on his Facebook page, and I would recommend going and catching up on that town hall if you're interested in seeing him address that question head on and get the people, the essential workers who are suffering under some of the obligations that they're taking on during the coronavirus crisis, and trying to get fair treatment to those workers. So I would recommend that on his Facebook page.
Mel?
Yes, I'm just wondering if anyone's got a nice, concise comparison of Andrew versus Hick on where they stand on different issues and just bullet point type things.
Don't all raise your hands at once.
I'm going to take that as a no. I was kind of hoping Owen would, but I can poke around on the website, I guess.
Yeah, I don't have it myself. I mean, I think Andrew made some really good points early on, and I think when he was talking in his introductory remarks, he made some great, concise bullet points about where he is and where Hick and Gardner are together. And Hick and Gardner are in lockstep on so many of the issues, and I don't have that handy, but that itself was a good resource, what he said there, and hopefully there's something like that, I'm not sure, on his website, but I'd be happy to transcribe what he said earlier and share that, because I thought that was very efficient and very clear distinction.
I'm thinking of handouts. I mean, to just, because a lot of people just don't like to talk much. So I'll be quiet.
Never, Mel, please. Bill Pearson and then Janet.
Yeah, one thing that's probably pretty obvious to everybody is in the energy and climate change world. Obviously, Hickenlooper is more in for probably reasonable but continuing drilling and so forth. And I think we all need to realize, I think we all do, that $1 billion of the Colorado economy per year comes from the severance taxes on the oil and gas, which, as much as we'd like to leave it in the ground, that's $1 more billion we have to come up with taxes or cuts to school teachers or highways or whatever. So that would be one. I'm just saying that's one difference between the two of them. One is very green and leave it in the ground, and the other one not so much.
Okay, Janet?
To be succinct, I think that Hickenlooper is a Republican in sheep's clothing. I think that if we would really put behind renewable energy in some of the ways I was suggesting, then that could become a new tax base for the state.
Hey, Marty Amble, you had a question earlier that we didn't get to.
It was going to be regarding healthcare. Andrew had a dynamite town hall about a week ago with Wendell Potter talking about the solutions to healthcare, and it was just an awesome, full hour-long presentation. And
Wow.
I think Andrew is absolutely on the right track with that.
And if I could jump in, I believe that also is on Facebook and possibly on his website, but I'm pretty sure on Facebook. All those town halls, I think you can go back and revisit.
Good. Okay, Bruce?
Yeah, Hickenlooper reminds me of Ben Campbell, who we elected as a Democrat, re-elected as a Democrat, and then he switched to the Republican in the mid-90s, earning him the nickname of Ben Switchhorse Campbell. I agree. You said he's a clone of Cory Gardner, and I just don't trust that guy.
Anyone else?
Candy, did you get the chat message I sent you?
I did not.
Okay. I was just wondering, can you let us know how we can access the recording from today?
I will. I don't know the answer to that question, but I will check into it and let you know.
And Candy, if you want, if you have any trouble, if you can send me the link, I can load it to YouTube or something like that.
That would be great. I will do that, Owen, this afternoon. Okay, thanks.
Candy, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
I wanted to ask Andrew Romanoff if he's been in contact with Perez or anybody at the DNC and in touch with any of the alleged elite East Coast Democrats who ordained Hickenlooper as a candidate, ignoring the fact that we have still to have the senatorial primary on June 30th.
Yeah. Thanks, Al.
I could say one thing about that, not direct answer, but Andrew, when he was in the race last February, when he entered the race, I believe in February, the DNC's or the DCCC, I guess, I don't know whatever it was, DSCC, Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee, got in touch with him and was ready to offer him money, I believe, and offer him support. And, you know, they said they wanted to weigh in on the race. And at that point, he was clearly the one they would have weighed in behind. And he said, I wish you wouldn't. You know, it's not time for you to be putting your thumb on the scale, as he said earlier today. You know, this is time for the voters to make their decision. And once we have a nominee, then I'm sure everybody would welcome your support. But he essentially, you know, when they were offering to help him win a primary, he was saying, that's not appropriate. I'd rather you didn't do that.
Yeah.
That's ethically interesting, but there's one huge thumb on the scale already from the DNC and those East Coast Democrats, the people who ordained Hickenlooper without asking us or without paying attention to the fact we still have a primary to come.
Right.
Mel?
Yes, I have a question for Janet Borelli. Last week, you gave a phone number for someone making masks, and I wrote it down and then I lost it. So sometime I'd like to get that phone number from you again. If you want to just email it after this, that's fine.
You know,
Great. I need people's email addresses or phone numbers. Is there a list, Candy?
Yes, it's on, we have a Google Doc site to share, and there's the list is right there.
How do I get on
Sue
that?
Ballantyne is the queen of the Google Docs, so I'll let Sue explain.
Do unmute
Yeah,
yourself.
Janet, I will check that site and make sure that you have access. And I have a sheet of instructions that I will send you. I'm pretty sure I have your email address somewhere.
Okay.
Okay, that sounds good. But it does sound a long way away. I'd like to be able to, you know, respond quickly. Here, I can give that number right now.
Okay.
Yeah, let me just go there.
Could I also mention that if you're looking for masks, Dardano's on South Colorado has about 40 or 50 different fabrics to choose from, 2 different sizes. It's a double fabric with a slit so you can put coffee filter or paper towel or something disposable in between. And we are supporting a local family-owned business. And by pleasant surprise, when I got my masks, I also got a coupon for 20% off on my next pair of shoes that I buy. You know, I'll just put it out there. I think, you know, we got our masks and they're absolutely adorable.
Great.
So that number is 97539-6038 for masks.
Okay, 970-539-6038.
Yes.
Thank you.
And it's
Okay.
probably Rochelle who will answer you.
Yeah. Okay, if no one else has any questions, may I ask CHE to talk about Jennifer Greenfield, who's going to join us next week?
Okay, well, she's in healthcare policies.
Hello.
University of Denver, so I think she will provide a lot of good information from that perspective in terms of writing policy for all this. And so, you know, I don't have a whole lot of other information other than that's what she does. She's a good speaker from what I gather from other friends that have listened to her. So that's the only thing I can tell you.
Okay, thanks, CHE.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else?
I hear the
Otherwise-
baseball season might start at the end of June with 3 different divisions instead of American League and National League.
Yeah, I don't quite understand how that's going to work. So they don't travel?
Yes, they'll travel. No one understands how it's going to work.
Okay, good. Okay, well, I guess we're done then. So I'll see y'all next week, and next week I'll learn how to not mute the speaker. I promise.
Thank you.